Welcome to another Student Zone session at Microsoft Build. My name is Loxley, and I'm currently a Microsoft Learn student ambassador and student at the University of Washington studying informatics. You're probably joining us after having wrapped up our opening session with Chloe and Morgan. They did a fantastic job giving us all a rundown of everything the Student Zone has to offer, and it was super cool to hear from Luann and Nana Abba. I love seeing fellow students help be breaking down barriers. And this session is all about VS Code and GitHub and is being presented by two women who have worked on these products. How awesome is that? And so, but right before I introduce you to them, please take a moment and read over the Microsoft Digital Code of Conduct in the chat. And alrighty, first up is our introduction to VS Code. Please welcome Sana.
Hey everyone, thanks Loxley. My name is Sana Ajani, and I'm a program manager on the Visual Studio Code team. I'm really excited to be here at Build with you. So with that, let's get started. All right, so I'm on the code.visualstudio.com website. If you're not familiar with what VS Code is, it's a lightweight, cross-platform, and free coding editor. We're really working hard to make this an easy-to-learn editor for students to use, as well as an flexible and adaptable editor for teachers and educators to use in the classroom. As part of our jobs on the VS Code team, we wanted to interview a lot of educators and students over the last year, and we found a lot of common pain points. No matter what institution or where you are working in the world, there's a lot of common friction points in the computer science classroom scenario. And one of those main friction points was setting up your local machine with the proper environment. So the answer to that on our VS Code end is dev containers. So I'm going to go over to the Learn section of our website and open up this development and containers. For those of you who might not know, containers and Docker allow you to run lightweight units of software and different versions of those software in an environment that's not actually your physical computer. So in this case, you can see that there's a Python container that has Python dependencies and the proper versions of those that allow you to run the Python app inside this isolated unit that's not actually physically on your computer. You do need Docker to be able to run these development containers, but essentially these containers allow you to standardize the environments of all the students in your class. We know that you spend a lot of valuable class time in the first couple of weeks trying to make sure that people with different operating systems or people who might have installed incompatible versions of software, that they can have a high quality environment so that they can actually work on the assignments and start coding. So dev containers allow you to save time and use containers and have a standardized environment. To be able to use dev containers in VS Code, you do need Docker that I already have installed, and you also need a remote containers extension. This is the extension we're going to talk about later on in the demo, so make sure you install this and you can follow along. All right, so another common pain point that we heard from students and educators was actually getting the code for your assignment onto your machine. You don't want to download a zip file and then if your teacher updates it, have to download another zip file. So we can harness the capabilities of GitHub from inside VS Code. To do that, I can go over to the accounts icon over here and make sure I've signed in with my GitHub account. So you can see I'm already signed in. And once you sign in, VS Code will open itself up to showing you different ways that you can use GitHub inside the editor. One way you can do that is by cloning a repository. So clicking on this, you can put in a link to a repository, or because I've signed in, I see this button that allows me to search through all the repositories I have, or just search through any repositories on GitHub. So for instance, if I wanted to search for a React project, I could just do that from inside VS Code. So the project I want to do is this Star Wars project. So I can click on that, choose where I want it in my local machine, and then immediately I get an option to clone, open the cloned repository. So this is a pretty seamless way to get the code from GitHub onto your machine and not have to worry about all the different Git commands. So for instance, we can just confirm that my Git branches were set up correctly, my remotes upstream were set up correctly. Yeah, look at that. Right, so you don't have to kind of worry about those Git commands messing them up or anything like that. You can just do it from VS Code. Cool. So the next thing that we see here is that the assignment, the project I have to work on, there's a lot of Java files. Okay, so this is a Java project. Let's make sure I have Java on my computer. All right, let's Okay, I don't actually have Java on my computer. Oh man, what am I going to do? So I don't know if I want to actually go ahead and install the JDK. I'm not sure what version of that I need. I don't know if I know how to actually add it to my path. I don't really want to mess up my computer to run this project. So instead, I'm going to take advantage of those development containers that we saw earlier. So earlier I saw a notification that this project had a dev container, and that's this file over here. And so now I can reopen this folder inside of a container. So let's go ahead and reopen in a container. So because the project that my educator created for us had a dev container, VS Code is able to spin one up and I can connect to it pretty easily. So VS Code is going to open itself up and it looks and feels just like VS Code. I'm going to, I have all the same files I had earlier. So now if I open up VS Code again, you can see that my terminal looks a little bit different. I'm inside of a Linux terminal right now. You can see on the bottom left corner, I'm inside of a dev container that's specifically meant to be able to run Java files. So now let's see if I have Java inside this container. All right, I do, right? So that was really, really awesome. I went from not having Java on my local machine to connecting to a container that's built for me to be able to run Java. So the magic of this happens inside of this dev container.json file. So you can see that this dev container.json file is how VS Code knows how to set up and connect to this container. It refers to a Docker file. And if you're not familiar with Docker files, that's okay. This is basically copied from a standard registry, and it's a standard Java file that you can copy and paste, put it in here, and it basically tells us what tools along with the JDK and Java that we want installed in our container. So the dev container refers to the Docker file. It can add in other arguments to set up the actual dev environment. And then it also has settings for VS Code and extensions for VS Code that we also want installed in this container. So you can see, for instance, that we have our professor has outlined different settings that we want for VS Code in here. One thing that we hear from a lot of educators is that I really wish that my students wouldn't rely on suggestions and IntelliSense super early on in their learning journey. So for instance, as an educator, I can turn off that setting inside of this container. And so, as you go along in the semester and have different assignments, you can tweak those settings so that you're learning progressively. You can also install different extensions inside of the container. So for instance, these are extensions that everyone who copies this, clones this repository and opens it up in VS Code will have these exact extensions. You can search for that over here. So you can see that my dev container extensions are the exact same ones that were listed in here. So this is a really great way, again, to standardize the environment and make sure that every one of your students has the same settings for VS Code and the same environment. Cool. So now we can go ahead, and the next problem that we kept hearing about from educators and students was, cool, I got the code, I have my environment set up, now I have to actually understand the code and understand the project. So we know that if you're opening up a file that has some kind of starter files, or if you're cloning a repository on GitHub that might have some existing code, trying to understand that code and trying to understand, what's the main file, which is the one that you should run, how do they all relate to each other, can be kind of confusing. So there's an awesome extension called COTOR, and this is the one I'm talking about, COTOR. So installing this allows you to create an interactive walkthrough of your folder or your project. So you can see here that there is a TORs folder and an actual TOR assignment in here. So this allows us to kind of go through a table of contents so we know what to expect with our project before opening it up. So installing the COTOR extension will open up this COTOR menu, and I can actually press play and start my TOR. Cool. So pressing play opens up the exact file that my professor wants me to go through and in the order that they want me to go through them. So for instance, this COTOR, it tells me that there's 5 steps in this TOR, and it gives me context. So for instance, this is simulation.java. We're going to build a simulator that predicts the battles and the outcomes of those battles against the rebellion and the empire. All right, cool. I have a lot more context now. Can go to the next step. Cool. So, I can go through the next file, and I can actually outline and highlight multiple lines in that file in this step. So we know that, all right, this is an assignment about inheritance and polymorphism. This is a soldier class. It's going to be the basic class that other classes will extend. And this tour step is actually just Markdown. So you can have code in here as an example. Cool, now I can go to the next subclass, and because I saw the soldier class, I now know how this next file relates to the earlier files. I can tell that there's a rebel soldier and that extends soldier. So I can keep kind of going through the assignment and get more of an interactive understanding of what it is I'm going to be doing and how exactly all the files relate. And last step, I can go through and make sure that, hey, all right, this is the class I'm going to be executing. Now I know how to actually run this project. So this is a really great way to provide context and tips, because sometimes we know that READMEs might not be populated or updated. And it's a lot more interactive than just following an instruction set on a PDF. So now we can finish this tour, and I have a much better idea of what I need to do to run this project. So now let's open up the terminal and actually run the project. I'll compile my code. I now know that I have to compile the battlefront.java class. All right, and now let's just run this and see the simulation happen in front of us. Cool, so now we can choose how many soldiers we want on each side. Let's just stick with 3 on each side. And now we can actually simulate what's happening. All right, let's keep going. All right, we're simulating this skirmish. All right, cool. We finished the simulation of our battle, and it looks like the rebellion won. All right, so now this is a great way to understand what my project is doing. I think it works really well. I kind of want to share it with my friends. The next kind of problem we kept hearing about, especially during this last year of remote working, is that collaboration and pair programming is really hard to do over Zoom or over Teams. So we want to make that easier and provide a more collaborative and real-time experience. So the last thing I want to show you is something called the Live Share extension. This is the Live Share extension. And this allows me to very easily give someone a link and have them enter my VS Code and work with me in real time. So let's just see it to believe it. Installing the extension will add this icon to your sidebar. And now I can click on Share, and this will share my collaboration session. So now I can get a link, and I'm going to send it over to my teammate, Meaghan, and have her join my VS Code session. So this is a really, really neat way to kind of work together while we're not physically together. So on Meaghan's end, what she'll see is get the link and be able to put that into her VS Code and the join button you might have seen earlier, paste the link, and then she'll be able to enter in my VS Code. All right, so I got a notification that Meaghan has joined my session. That's really awesome. So I can actually see that she's in here. So not only am I sharing my code, but I'm also sharing my terminal and my servers. And I can also chat with her. So I can send her a quick message. Hey, Meaghan. All right, so what's cool about this is I can also follow her. So if you have someone in your code, you can right click and follow them. So now I can actually edit what she's editing. So if I open up a file or if I have some other file open, I can actually follow her along. So let's see where Meaghan is.
I'm just taking a look through this class so far, Sana. I think it looks great. I love how easy it is to just connect to this live share session with you. As I look through this list of Rebel heroes, though, I think we're missing someone really important.
Oh, man. Can you help me add? Oh, okay, cool. Can you just add it for me?
Yep, yeah, I can add him right in. So let's go ahead and add in Han Solo to the end of this list.
I can't believe I forgot Han Solo. Thanks for checking that. So that was really neat, right? I'm not touching my keyboard. Meaghan is actually in my editor. I can see her cursor, I can see her edit my code. And the cool part about this is that now I can go over to my source control and actually see the change that she made. And now it actually says that it's co-authored by the both of us because both of us worked on it. So this is a really cool way to collaborate together in real time, right? Meaghan can help me and join me whenever I need. And then we can, end the session, and it's really quick and really simple. So hopefully this is all these things that we just showed you, these different extensions, make the learning journey and actually starting to code a lot more interactive and familiar for you. So now I'll give it over to Meaghan to give you an introduction on GitHub.
Thanks so much, Sana, for that great tour of VS Code. Hello, everyone. My name is Meaghan Lewis. I'm a senior cloud advocate here at Microsoft. I'm a big fan of GitHub, and I use it nearly every single day. I've been a GitHub user myself since 2010 when I was a university student myself, and it's still the only place where I host my own software projects and collaborate with others on their projects as well. I'm excited to share what makes GitHub a core developer tool. So let's go ahead and get into it. So if you see my screen, you see GitHub's slogan is "Where the world builds software." It is the home for developers, where there are nearly 65 million developers who build and contribute to software on the platform. There are organizations like Microsoft or Python, for example, that have lots of users and even more repositories that make up an organization. It is also the world's biggest host of open source software. So these projects are free for anyone to use. You can also contribute to them, and they are typically maintained by either a group of individuals or teams at a company. Lastly, GitHub is also designed for collaboration. It is perfect for teams to work together, for collaborators and maintainers of projects, no matter where in the world they are. It also works well for individuals and businesses as well. So before I get started with this demo, I have to stop right here and just say, if you do not have a GitHub account, now is absolutely the time to go ahead and sign up for one. It's free and it only takes a minute. And as I begin the tour, I really just want to highlight some of the most core features of GitHub that are really going to be your features used regularly for contributing and working with others on software. So I'm going to just start with giving an overview of my own user profile that you see here. So once you create your own user account, you'll be taken to your profile, which you can find with just adding your username at the end of the URL there. And as I look around this profile, I can see that there's some information about myself. First of all, I have a bio, which I'll talk about how to create that in a moment. I have a profile over here. I see some information about myself, maybe some organizations that I belong to, some of the popular repositories that I have either created myself or that I am a part of. So what you should do just from the get-go is go ahead and create a profile and add some information about yourself. So I can see that over on my left-hand sidebar here on the screen, where I can add a very short bio about myself. You can, talk about where you're working at or what you're working on. I can include a company, location, and an email address here for how to contact me, a website, and Twitter. So these are really some great tools for how other people can learn a little bit more about you and know how to get in touch with you. You can think of GitHub as like kind of a social network for code. So it's really a great place to start to build up your profile and share a little bit of information to the 65 million developers around the world who use GitHub. So one thing that I want to call out is this bio here. So once you actually create a user account, it can be a great time for you to go in and create a new repository. You can easily do that by pressing this plus sign in the top right-hand corner and creating a new repository. There are lots of different repositories that you're going to create for different purposes. You can choose whether they are public, so anyone on the internet can see them. A public repository can also be an open source repository. Or it can be private, where only you can see this repository and you can invite others to come and work on the repository with you. So those are some steps that you might want to follow right off the bat. I might suggest for your first repository to go ahead and create a repository name with the same name as your username. And I'll show you what the cool thing about that is. So in this repository that I have, that is the name of my username, I can do something just like host a website, a personal website. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. There is also another purpose. So something recently that GitHub has added is that this is a special repository. And it's readme.md, which stands for Markdown, will appear on your public profile. So one of the really kind of core components of GitHub is these Markdown files. So Markdown is just a super lightweight markup language where within this text editor, you can format text to your heart's desire. So if we look in this file, I can edit and I can also preview, so I can easily see my changes that I make. It is super easy just to go ahead and edit things in here. This first line is just indicating that this is a header. So there are various levels of headers I can use. So this is an H2. If I just have one of those hash marks, I can make it a little bit bigger. I use these little dash marks to indicate bullets. So this is a list of bullets that I have here. If you look at these emojis that I have, I can also include those. So I can go ahead and just insert or copy and paste various emojis in here. I can insert links kind of like that. I can insert pictures down here, for example. So this is just kind of a brief overview of all the possibilities that you might include in Markdown. I want to show something quickly. So I have a picture of my dogs here, but it's a little bit old. It was them like in a Halloween outfit, I think. So we want to update that because I take pictures of my dogs all the time. So it's super easy to add attachments. If I just go ahead and drag an attachment in here, you'll notice that it is uploading and it just takes a moment. And when it does, it should produce a link just like that. So say that I just want to go ahead and replace that picture. I can get rid of that original one and add something new in. And I see the new picture just down here. So I'm happy with these changes for now. And, you know, I try to come in and update my profile pretty regularly. And with Markdown and with everything on GitHub, you should feel free to make updates regularly. That's kind of the beauty of GitHub. You can see all the changes here. You can always go back and keep editing and keep updating as much as you want. So I'm going to go ahead and commit these changes here where I can just say update dog picture or something like that, just to describe what the changes are that I'm making, and commit those changes. And then when I go back to my profile up here on the top right-hand corner, I can see my new picture there. So just a quick little overview of actually how you might provide some changes to your README. If you go and press this pencil icon to edit any file, you'll also see at the bottom right-hand corner of any Markdown doc that styling with Markdown is supported, and this is a great place to kind of get a little bit more of a guide of how you can use Markdown and start playing around with some of those features. So back to my profile, I'm going to check out the Explore tab. So Explore is a really great place if you are a developer, if you're someone who is just wanting to come and learn a little bit more about what topics you can explore, what repositories or organizations that you can find. So this is often a place that I find myself coming to when I want to explore something new. Let's say, you know, in this scenario, I'm looking for a new project to collaborate on. So I want to, you know, find a new open source project. I have been checking out the NASA repositories. I'm a big fan of space exploration, I should say. So I've been looking a little bit at this topic in particular. You'll notice that it was a starred topic, so I can always find those topics that interest me really easily. Here I can see a list of all of the public repositories matching this topic. That might be a little bit too broad for me, so let's go ahead and click on this NASA with this kind of company icon, which will take me to the organization. And here I can see the actual NASA org itself. So these are repositories that are part of this organization. And I can just take a look at, you know, the organization, the people, the projects that are included as part of this, and say that I've heard a little bit about the Cumulus project. And as a JavaScript developer, this is a project that could be interesting to me. I also see that it was updated recently, which is a good sign that folks have been working on this consistently and it's not outdated. So it could be a great project for me to come and see how I can help out. When I get to any repository homepage, I just start to kind of explore it, right? There's an abundance of information that you can find just from the repository homepage. So what I can do is just start to look around. I will always first focus my attention on the README itself. So in the README, I can see in this one, it is really, really detailed, and I love that. That makes me so happy as someone who is wanting to learn more about this project. I can find all the information that I need here. So I see that there are some development notes, so I can see how the project is built, a little bit about the tech stack, learn how to install it, see how to run the APIs locally, see how to run the tests locally. That's super important. And then what I'd be looking for is, as a contributor, what do I need to know about contributing? So I might focus my attention on this contributing.markdown guide. And so all open source projects should have a contributing document that is really clear about what the maintainers are looking for and what will be helpful for you wanting to be a contributor of this project. So in this contributing doc, looks like it's pretty straightforward, which is good. They are outlining the process of how to submit an issue, how to create a pull request, which we'll talk about in just a moment. And then there's a list of guidelines. So these are all the things that I want to keep in mind about how to be a good contributor myself. So I should include documentation, and there's an overview of how I should do that. I should absolutely run the test. I should do things like make small commits. So those are kind of all the things that I want to keep in mind as I think about contributing to this project. So let me first focus on submitting an issue. Let's say that might be somewhere that I want to start with, or even search open issues to see if there's some interesting ones that I can pick up right now and see if I can fix. And when I go to the issues list, luckily there's only 9 issues. There's just a handful. So again, it's not super overwhelming to me as someone new to this project. I see that there is this one about docs containing broken links. So if I look in this issue, this user was reporting that a few of the links in this contributing document are relative paths that do not contain the Markdown suffix. So this is going to lead to some 404s when attempting to navigate them in GitHub. So this is a pretty good issue. It at least gives me somewhere to start. I don't know what links are broken, so something that I might want to do, and as just anyone investigating this issue, what you might do is go to this contributing doc, start clicking through all the links and trying to find out exactly what's wrong. And then say that, once I find that link, I can go ahead and edit. So press this pencil icon again right on the file. And right away, I'm shown this banner that I'm making changes in a project that I don't have write access to. So it's letting me know that submitting a change will write it to a new branch in your fork. So a quick overview about forks. Forks are like a copy of the project that I get. So instead of NASA Cumulus, I, under my Meaghan Lewis owner or organization, will create a copy of this repository so that I can make a bunch of changes there and then send a pull request. So send my changes to be approved by the maintainers of this organization. So it's just outlining that. And all I have to do basically is look for the broken link and write some code here, or just add in some text to fix that link. And then right down at the bottom of this file, I can choose to propose changes, which will then take me to a place where I can then submit a pull request. So I'm not going to submit the pull request now. I don't yet know it's broken, and I'm not going to explore that here in this live session, but we can just for a minute look at what a pull request is composed of. So if I do see this latest pull request here, we can just come and take a look at that briefly. This pull request is going to have a description of what this pull request is introducing. There should be a summary of the changes, and then there's a checklist. So I believe that this checklist is part of a template. So that's another cool thing about GitHub, is the maintainers can set up these templates for you to remember what is important information to include. And this, as someone who is making some changes, I want to make sure that I do these 4 things. These are kind of the important things for me to follow to be a good contributor. So I want to include that information. In the contributing guidelines, it also recommended that we have very small and specific commits. So that's something to keep in mind. The change that I want to introduce is going to be updating links. So I can, have a commit for every single link that I update. There's also going to be a list of files changed, which in this situation is kind of a lot, but you can really see the overview of the changes here really nicely. And the last thing that's a big component of a pull request that I'll call out for now is at the bottom that you should see a series of checks that have been run. So many repositories, especially open source ones like these, are going to include a list of checks, certain security or test or builds that need to pass when you are introducing changes. So it's going to require that all of these checks have passed and that there is actually a review by someone who has write access or a maintainer. So those are kind of the things that are going to be really important when having a pull request or having a successful pull request that gets approved by the team. So that's kind of it that I wanted to show for this quick demo about how you actually kind of go through the process of exploring new topics that you're interested in and finding a project to contribute to as a developer.
That was absolutely awesome, Meaghan and Sana. Thank you so much for the fantastic presentations. And now the awesome thing is we have time for questions. And so our very first question is for you, Meaghan. So how can I find projects to contribute to on GitHub?
Great question. So the first place that I always go to is that explore page that I showed in the beginning of the demo. That is going to be a great place for me just to really kind of have an open slate of places that I can go to find new organizations, new projects, new people. So that's going to be a great place to start. I would also recommend just, searching based on your interests. So say that I really want to learn Python or React. I'm going to want to look for those topics on GitHub to find repositories that look like ones that I can start to kind of work with and contribute to. So that's where I'd start for sure.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Sana, we now have a question for you. So what would you say is the difference between maybe GitHub Codespaces and VS Code? Like, which one would I use in which situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. GitHub Codespaces is something that I think is in beta right now, but that is essentially an online development environment, but gives you a very similar VS Code experience. And you don't have to install anything locally. So kind of what we just saw with the dev containers that I showed earlier, those are the same things that are like basically powering Codespaces and allowing you to have a similar experience of not necessarily installing Java or Python exactly on your machine. If you are in a class environment and are able to connect with a browser to your Codespace, that would be the best option for that. But if you also have like your actual machine at home or like a class machine that you have, a lab machine, then you might want to use VS Code. But you can have a very similar experience with both.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sana. We're going to go back to you, Meaghan, for another question. So what would you say, I think you talked about this a little bit in your demo, but what would you say is the difference between a contributor and a maintainer on a GitHub project?
Thanks, Loxley. So the difference is essentially in what access you have for a particular project or repository. So the NASA Cumulus project that I was looking at, I was investigating that from the perspective of a contributor or collaborator. So I want to come and find out how I can work on this project, but I don't have write access to the project. I really only have read-only access that has to be kind of approved by a maintainer who can see all my changes and approve my changes. The maintainer is kind of the owner of that repository. So the maintainer does have write access, full admin access to the project, and can then approve my changes and really just kind of manage the whole project.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And now, Sana, we're going to go back to another question for you. So you talked about the difference between GitHub Codespaces and Visual Studio Code. What would you say are the difference between Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code?
Yeah, thanks. That's another good question. Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio are essentially in the same family of products, but Visual Studio is an IDE or integrated development environment. And that's more of a powerful environment. It has a lot more features that are like fully fleshed that help you with like, navigation and debugging and like wizards and UI that help you, especially if you're doing like .NET or C# development. But if you're doing more of a lightweight and you just want an editor, like a text editor, that's VS Code. You can add more extensions and more of those features that Visual Studio might provide out of the box, but you can do that through extensions in VS Code. So it's more lightweight, more flexible, and you can kind of choose which of those editing features you want through extensions.
Awesome. That was a fantastic explanation. And so now, Meaghan, we're going to go back to you. We have a question, and can we run or build projects within GitHub?
Absolutely. Can you run or build projects within GitHub? Yes, I think, I think I should maybe like 150 repositories. A handful of those are mine, where I, am creating probably for a variety of purposes. There was that like, Megan Lewis repository that I have just with my own username where I am hosting a website. So I think what I'm doing there is just using like a GitHub Pages site, which are just static websites that you can stand up really easily to actually kind of, just have a website and run that. There are, other projects that I have that I either currently contribute to or have contributed to in the past where, you have fully, fledged apps that you are actually kind of like building and maintaining and running there. So, I mean, there's lots of different use cases. I think definitely, from the time that I started using GitHub, it was all about building apps. Now, like in my day-to-day, I use GitHub for a lot more reasons. Like I kind of use it as just like for, project management. I can keep track of my own tasks there. So like I have repositories just for planning, for example. So it's really multi-purpose, but you can have lots of different repositories for many purposes.
I love how you can use GitHub repositories for so many different things. So that's just absolutely amazing. I feel like I'm learning so many things during this session. And so now we have another question for Sana, even though I feel like, Meaghan, you're probably also an expert in this. So, and I absolutely love the Visual Studio Live Share extension, but do you need any special requirements like log into GitHub for the Live Share extension to work in Visual Studio?
Yes. So if you're starting a live share session, you do need to log in with your Microsoft or your GitHub account. But if you're sending a link to someone, they can actually like enter your session as a guest and not actually sign in. So only the person who like starts the session needs to have authenticated or signed into something. But you can have someone join as a guest, and you can actually also have up to 30 people join your session. So, you can send it to basically your entire class and have them join and collaborate alongside you.
Awesome. And I think we are reaching our very final question. This will be for Meaghan. So once again, GitHub is just an amazing resource, but what automation features does GitHub provide?
Great question. So there are quite a few automation features. Some that are kind of really just built into the core functionality of GitHub. So I highlighted issues and pull requests, for example. So one of the automation features that I use most regularly is to use keywords, say either in my issues or pull requests. So if I, I'm looking at the scenario where I'm picking up an issue. So picking up, like, meaning I'm going to work on this issue, and then I'm submitting a pull request to fix that issue. I might use a keyword like fixes and then put in the issue number so that when that pull request is merged successfully, the issue will also close. So I love features like that. I think especially when you're working on huge projects, like let's say VS Code, for example, it can be really amazing to take advantage of some of those features so that, you are kind of just like keeping things in order, right? I think especially for projects that have a huge amount of volume of issues and pull requests, it's a really nice way to help keep things organized and just kind of stay updated. So that's one of my favorite automation features. I think there's also a lot that I've been exploring with GitHub Actions. So I won't really get so much into that. But GitHub Actions is a really powerful way to automate lots of different workflows. So for, again, looking at kind of the scenario with issues and pull requests, there's a lot that you can do there to like further kind of automate. Let's even say like, your pull request checks, like there's a lot of different checks that you can kick off to run automatically, for example, there. So that's another really powerful one with lots of different scenarios of how to use it.
That is so awesome. Thank you so much to you both, Sana and Meaghan. And so now to wrap this session up, we're going to show you some resources for this session so that you can learn more. So a couple of our resources is an intro to GitHub Learn module. And then also there's also a Learn to Code with VS Code on Microsoft Learn, which are just absolutely fantastic. And then also we provided some instructions to how to install VS Code on your own machine. And the resources for the entire Student Zone event are GitHub repo with links to all of the sessions, speakers, and resources, and then our Microsoft Learn collection to continue upskilling. And then finally, the Student Zone sessions on the Microsoft Build website. And then finally, don't forget to fill out the survey for this session. You can find a link to the evaluation at the bottom of this session page or by using the My Evaluations link on the Build site. And thank you so much once again for joining Sana and Meaghan and myself for this session about VS Code and GitHub. Now that you know how and where to get started, we are going to jump into some languages, C# and Python. And the session will be hosted by Cloud Advocate Brian Clark, who you guys may know from Twitch, and will be represented by James and Christopher. So that session will start in about 3 hours. So set a timer or alarm because you will not want to miss it.